Welcome everyone. So Sunay and I have a different format today. I was thinking we send each other a lot of links, Sunay and I, throughout the week and constantly, really. So I had the idea of kind of compiling those links as we send them back and forth, and just kind of riffing on some of those topics, almost as in a grab bag episode. So, what do you think today? Want to jump in and go through these?
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, I get giddy every time I get one of these messages and get my brain flowing and thinking about this stuff. And then we narrow it down to one episode. So, bonus for everyone here. We're going to try to cover 4 topics.
All right, let's do it. All right, so yeah, let's jump right in. So the first one I wanted to talk about was this newsletter. I follow Scott Galloway, who's a NYU professor. He talks a lot about the loneliness epidemic, and specifically kind of the crisis amongst young men. So he had an interesting topic in one of his newsletters. The newsletter is called No Mercy, No Malice, and the topic was friending, and specifically making friends as an adult and as a man. So, it is very specific, but interesting nonetheless. So, I think this is kind of a run up to his book coming out, which is called Notes on Being a Man. And I wanted to start with a quote from the newsletter. So, let's see, here we go. But he gives some statistics. So, I'll just kind of skim through some of the statistics. So, it says 3 decades ago, 55% of men reporting having at least 6 close friends. Today, only 27% of men can say the same. Worse, 15% of men say they have zero friends, a 5x increase since 1990. These are pretty sobering statistics. And he kind of goes on, what happens to those men when the shit gets real? One horrifying data point, men account for 3 out of every 4 deaths of despair in America. Too many men are stuck, isolated, unproductive, and prone to obesity. They're addicted to drugs, gambling, porn, and whatever other substances provide a dopa hit with minimal friction. They're susceptible to misogyny, conspiracy theories, and radicalization. They make inadequate mates, employees, and citizens. Can we turn this around? Yes, we have to. That's why I wrote the book. So there's a lot there. So what do you think, Sinead?
What a awesome topic for us to give some oxygen to. I think if we all look closely in the world around us, challenge this trend is very obvious. I don't think it's controversial. I think the data speaks for itself, but then I think our lived experiences give the data credibility. A couple things from my own narrative. Our local town publishes the top graduate kids. And I guess because of the undue amount of pressure announcing a valedictorian and salutatorian has on the competitive nature of kids, instead of teaching them how to thrive in a competitive world, we stopped giving out the valedictorian salutatorian awards. And so we just publish a list of top 10 people. Separate topic, but I'll get to my point. The last 2 years or 3 years that I've been looking at this list, it has been either all girls or 9 out of 10 of the top 10 graduates were girls. And so I feel like there has been maybe an over indexing on how we are trying to rectify the gender disparity in our world, in our country. And I'm all for it. I love that it has happened. I think it was necessary. And I think it's an important dynamic for us to continue to evaluate and think about for equality between men and women. However, I think we may have overcorrected a bit in terms of the attention we're giving boys and young men on how to be boys and young men in society as full functioning adults, as being courageous and bold, and understanding how to have a relationship with women and girls. There's a reduction, and Scott talks about this as well, of men and young boys wanting to enter into romantic relationships and even get married, have sex, have children, raise families. And so we are, I think, pretty close to having a either, flat population growth or almost a negative population growth if the current trends continue, because we're not mating and we're not marrying and we're not reproducing at the levels because of, I think, some of what you just read in the article, that men and young, boys and young men don't know how to adult. They don't know how to talk to girls and women and interact with them in a healthy way. And I think it's on us to have more conversations about this and not demonize the interaction between men and because of a bunch of or even a few bad actors, that it's essential for us men and women to have relationships with each other.
Yeah, no, so true. And yeah, I mean, I think it's clear that the pendulum has swung too far the other way, right? And I think this naturally happens with any social change, right? I think you almost have to first make an overcorrection and then you kind of come back, right? It's kind of like a natural sine wave or whatever you want to call it. But it's probably the completely wrong term. But like there's a little bit of back and forth before you kind of find an equilibrium, right? So we're probably right in the midst of that. And, obviously the Me Too movement and all of that was extremely important. And I agree with you. I mean, we both have daughters and, uh, I think it was clearly necessary for that movement to happen. But yeah, I think it's definitely swung way too far in one direction, and I think we need to come back and find a middle ground. And I actually hate tying this back to social media because I feel like we always do that. But there's it's a I think it's a confidence thing too. I think if you're a young man or a young boy and you see so many people on social media being successful and being Scott Galloway gives a great anecdote about meeting someone as an adult, as a grown man, meeting someone and being invited to go out to a Rangers game because he had met someone who's a doctor for the Rangers. And he said in the past he would have said no because he would have been too intimidated because this guy was so accomplished and everything. But it got me thinking that there's a real you take a confidence hit every time you're on social media. You see people doing, whether or not it's warranted, you see people doing these amazing things with amazing people and amazing locales. And if you're not doing that on a regular basis, really no one is. But you kind of you fall into that comparison syndrome, and I think your confidence takes a hit. So it's really hard to make friends, especially as an adult. I mean, I think Sunay, you kind of agree. As you get older, it does become harder to make friends as an adult. But I think it's kind of because of social media a little bit. It's gotten harder for younger people too to have the confidence to go out and make friends and put themselves out there.
Yeah, the framing is so different of what they consider acceptable, what is, considered normal behavior, and how they understand to carry, or how they even determine the way in which to carry themselves based off of exposure to how others around them are carrying themselves. And you used to have bias based off of your town, your neighborhood, your state, the region that you grew up in, your access to urban environments, and the number of people that you would interact with and the diversity of them would usually impact what your belief system was and what your skills were in all different aspects of life, including socializing, academic, handiness, fixing things like crafts, all of that, right? And when now all of that is so easy to trick yourself into believing that you're gaining these skills because you're watching a YouTube video or you're watching some influencer create content to, tease an ad or whatever, right? Like tease some product that you feel like you should go out and buy. The effort involved in making you get that, I guess, knowledge of how to interpret your action to take, the scale and size is it's incomprehensible to us who having grown up without it, because it's filtered down to what the majority have already determined as interesting. Like the work is done for us. And that whole exercise of self discovery, of seeing what you like, seeing what you don't like, and iterating it with other humans is gone, because now you interact with the other humans in your life, even the ones that you physically see in school and sports, is done digitally. So I almost feel like we as parents growing up in, I don't know, Shaq, call it an analog generation, aren't really like in tune with the way in which our kids are growing up in this new digital generation. And I agree with a lot of Scott's premises, and our biases are of course baked, I think, in good science, that these are fundamental truths. It's like I don't need data to tell me if I eat chocolate cake breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I'm going to die. Like, I don't need data to tell me that being digitally engaged to the level that our kids are is unhealthy for them. I find that intuitive. And so the question then becomes, what do we do about it? And how do we continue to instill values that we believe in, that we grew up with, into our children so that they're not just looking for the next dopamine hit, that they're thinking a little bit further down the road about their mental health, their social health, their physical health, and not just looking for the next dopa hit. Sorry, that was a long
Yeah.
one.
No, no, all good, man. No, it's great. It's such a rich topic, right? And I think we could definitely do a full episode on that one, and probably will in the future. But yeah, I think that was a good one. Thanks, Scott Galloway, for that. And yeah, I definitely want to pick up his book when it comes out. But really interesting topic. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. Uh, we were talking about this earlier, but there's this place called the Alpha School in Austin, Texas, and it's a private school. And their big pitch is they have 2-hour days where the students are guided by AI teachers. So, well, the full day is a little bit longer than that. Obviously, they're essentially compressing down their traditional school day down into 2 hours, the traditional curriculum down into 2 hours a day, using AI to accelerate the learning, and then using the remaining time to teach the students other life skills. So that's really interesting. What was your initial impression on that?
Initial impression was definitely intrigue and interest. I think the macro premise of teaching skills beyond just what the academic rigor has been stipulating under the Industrial Revolution was always intriguing. And then having a person that immersed his kids into the charter school and him documenting his experience was also very fascinating and interesting to read. But I feel like these types of exercises are just like they're happening too slow. Like, we need so many more experiments and we need data to come quickly because, like, anyway, I was excited that this is happening, but I think that it is just happening too slow, and innovation is moving faster. But I give these guys a lot of credit. I think it's super exciting, and I believe this is the right path to reforming our education system.
Yeah, I mean, it's a super interesting concept, right? There is one thing I worry about. Well, let me read the quote from the parent who had put their kids in the school and their kind of initial impression of it. So he says, since they started in October, my children have been marching through and mastering material roughly 3 times faster than their age-matched peers and their own speed prior to the program. I am not convinced that an alpha-like program will work for every child, but I expect for roughly 30 to 70% of children, it could radically change how fast they learn and dramatically change their lives and potential. So I have mixed feelings. So yeah, I agree. I think AI can be an extremely powerful tool, especially for education, if kind of deployed in the correct way, right? With guardrails and, making sure that any AI tool that we put in the classroom is thoroughly tested and, make sure there's no hallucinations and all that that all goes without saying, because I think that's a non-negotiable in my book. But I do worry that if you do condense all that material down to 2 hours, we talked about this today where, um, like, when you read a book, you layer on thoughts and you layer on ideas in a structured way that gives your brain time to process these things, right? And make connections with other ideas and other things in your head. And I worry if I don't think you get the same. There's all these like book condensation services, right? Where it'll give you a condensed version of a book and give you like the main ideas. I don't think you get the same out of that. Yeah, you could, you get, let's say, um, you have like a self-help book that has a certain kind of thought process and how you can improve your life, whatever that is, right? So, yeah, you could get a book condensing service to go through that, give you the main ideas, and you could read those bullet points. But I guarantee you're not going to get and you're not going to get the same out of it that someone who read the book will have, right? So I worry that condensing down material wouldn't be the same as learning it in a kind of more structured way. But it's hard to say without knowing exactly how they're condensing down that material into 2 hours.
I'll push back a little on your comment, Chirag, because I feel like you're maybe you and I like think of it a little different. Like
Hmm.
I don't think this should be about condensing school curriculum that has been taught and then, trying to squeeze it in 2 hours. I feel like it is if I was building it, it would be more about learning how to use the new tools and technologies that you have available to fundamentally change how we even educate kids and what we educate them about. Like, is it still necessary for us to learn and memorize dates of what happened in history, or is it more important for us to learn about, well, World War One started because of XYZ, or World War Two started because of, ABC. Those are like insights, and the extraction of the insight and how we can ask questions of either, whichever large language model, query tool we use of ChatGPT, Cloud, whatever, and learning how to use the tools we have available. Like that's what I believe these schools need to be focused on, and doing pilot programs to see whether, we just fundamentally shift how we create functioning citizens for the jobs of tomorrow, because it's not going to be about knowing your history. No, for sure. Like, how will it impact your communication skills, how your live presentation skills, like all of that is just I don't think it'll be recognizable in 10 years from now. I don't like I think 10 years from now that and I'll go on a really quick tangent because school just started for my kids, and the this school year many of the teachers have eliminated digital homework, that kids have to literally handwrite, get their notebooks out, because they don't want the kids using AI. Like, they literally want kids handwriting stuff in high school. I have the 11th and 10th grade boys and a 5th grade girl, right? So that's it. Like, I think that there's something about the live presentation that is going to become the be all end all of somebody's ability. And I think that we have to find a way to still be able to communicate information with intelligence and confidence, but be able to expedite the way in which we educate kids in a completely different paradigm from the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, no, I get you. I think maybe my brain was more stuck on how do we teach them the same curriculum but in a shorter time frame. But yeah, no, I get it. We want to. I agree. What we want to move away from the what and the how and get to the why, right? And I think I would completely agree with that. Let's get to the why something happened in history rather than memorizing the exact date that happened and testing them on it. Yeah, totally on board with that.
Cool. Good
Yeah,
one.
how do your kids feel about that change, by the way?
Yeah, I mean, it might be a little early to tell, but the first reaction was frustration. One of my one of my kids took like a pass fail course over the summer that was like one of his like half year requirements, like personal finance or something, and like he literally did the entire class on ChatGPT. He's like, I didn't even write a single essay. Like, just put the prompts in, submitted it. It was like a pass fail class. Like, I was like, well, great. Like, I was upset that we never got taught personal finance growing up in our school curriculum. And so we put a personal finance course to teach our kids about personal finance, and they just mail it in and use ChatGPT. And I was like, all right, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this now. I don't know if you can learn how to, I mean, will they even need to balance their checkbook? I mean, there's mint.com and whatever else, like their bank's probably going to do it for it.
No,
I don't even, I mean, I don't balance a checkbook. So, I mean, does he really need to know
no.
that? I don't know.
Right. No, that's true. And going back to that life skills, yeah, I think the idea behind the alpha school was also that, if you're condensing down, or not condensing, but like if you're using AI assistants to teach in 2 hours, then you can use the additional whatever it is, 4 hours for life skills like presentation skills and other things. So yeah, I think that's the idea behind it. So yeah, I think if you do free up that time and you can teach them other skills, like maybe financial literacy and presentation skills and doing projects that you would do in the real world too, rather than rote memorization and some of these other things that are still, holdover from these antiquated education systems. And I think that that's a good thing. But yeah, I think you're right. Like, I think let's test it. Why not? Like, what do we have to lose? Let's test it and see what works, and use those things.
I feel like education will get even democratized in a very different way. And I'll make my hypothesis on my personal experiences with what's happening within local towns and communities that I see of as adults are, I see interacting a little bit more, trying to be more social, placing a higher value on socializing. I feel like, especially like this, that was really interesting about this alpha school was it mimics more of like how corporate life, how work life works in that, if you're lucky in a given day, you may get 2 hours to actually do your own real work, and most of the time that's outside of the time that you're in meetings. And so
Yeah.
if you are actually training the workforce of the future and your employees are going to be knowledge workers, then it's not necessarily about what they know, but it's about how do they execute and can they solve problems. And the best way to get problems solved in a large matrix conglomerate bureaucratic organization is knowing how to navigate social structures. And if you're in this alpha school and if 6 hours of your day are navigating social structures, 2 hours aren't getting content and getting enrichment of knowledge, then that is probably the right mix of how you get shit done in a large bureaucratic organization. Because it really, I mean, I see it every day. It doesn't really matter what the hell you know. Like your knowledge of the subject, your experience in a given domain, it doesn't really matter. It's more about can you build the right relationships? Can you play the game to align the right individuals that you need to make a decision, get a decision made, and then move on to the next issue that you need to solve. Like those skills aren't gained by sitting 6 hours in a classroom. Just not. We were so disconnected. So anyway, optimism for all of us out there looking for some optimism in our education system. Like encourage more pilots, more programs, more iterations. Like Austin's a great town, great for them for iterating their education system. Like go into your local school board and talk to them about this and see if you can get local communities to maybe not adopt a whole, alpha school program, but maybe parts of it. Maybe you pick a small, like we did a whole movement for STEM, right? Like most public schools in New Jersey had some STEM program. Like, let's do AI immersion and AI based learning and do some pilots in a responsible way that progress our education system. It'll reinvigorate teachers, it'll reinvigorate children. Like, it'll give us some hope that we're trying something new. So, anyway, that's my call to action.
Yeah, no, great. Like, I mean, let's experiment more. Why not? All
Definitely.
right. All right, so let's move on to our next topic, which is a Substack post from Kyla Scanlon. So I think she posted this after she was on The Daily Show a while back in July. And the title is Zero Sum Thinking in the Labor Market. And it's a really interesting blog post. You can check it out at kyla.substack.com. We want to start with this one snippet here, which is she says, in this management phase, we've watched student loans turn universities into profit centers. We've seen healthcare become a financialized industry. We've witnessed housing become an asset class for investors rather than, homes for people to live in. Everything feels like it's being optimized for someone else's profit rather than expanded for everyone's benefit. And so young people and everyone else living through this moment have been taught to think in zero sum redistribution rather than positive sum creation. So, wow, I mean, that's super powerful, right? And, you know, I think it makes me immediately think of Bernie Sanders for some reason, because I think while I love Bernie, I think that there can be some like zero sum thinking there, right? Where you think of kind of redistribution rather than growing the pie, right? Like you don't think about making the pie bigger, you think about redistributing what's in the current pie or what you think is limited to the current pie. So I think that's a super powerful snippet right there. What do you think?
That this whole article gave so much to think about. I think zero sum thinking and this sort of let's hoard what we have is such a awful like mentality, mindset, and cultural phenomena. And there's so many reasons that we're in this situation. And I'll go on a whole tangent that I'll reserve for another episode, and that'll be about just like refocusing on the middle class. But I think one of the core symptom or like core contributors to this mindset is of this scarcity mindset is fear, number one. And I think fear coupled with a lack of hope and upward mobility or vertical mobility, which was the promise of America for forever. And if we don't have that belief that macro economy is going to continue to grow, and we believe that there is no way in which I myself through my own efforts can be given my share of compensation for the hard work that I'm doing, then you're just start getting down this, like, really, then you get into zero sum thinking. Well, forget it, this is all I'm going to have, like, I better make the most of this, and like I better hold on to mine because someone else is going to come for it, and like, oh, let me go buy a gun and like protect my property and protect my yard, and if anybody tries to tread on me, like, I'll blow their heads out. Like, it is such a toxic mindset that when I read this article, like, I remember even when you sent it to me, I was like, oh my God, this is like, it resonated so much to capture the zeitgeist of our country, I think. So, okay, went on that little tangent. So what, right? Like, so what with all this, like, zero sum thinking, and like what you were saying, are people thinking of this as like a redistribution of chips? And I think when systems fail, that is the knee jerk reaction of like how to fix a broken system, is that, well, everybody just put their chips back on the table, and then we'll figure out a way to equally divide it. Like, to your exact point, like, it just, that'll like never ever work. I mean, just put yourself in that situation, anybody that's listening to this, and say, hey, I know you've got a nice job, but like the company that you work for is like really immoral and unethical, and if you really believe in being a good person and a moral person, you should quit your job. Are you willing to do that? Like, who's going to raise their hand and say, I'm going to quit my job for the greater good? Like, it just doesn't happen. And that's the same mindset of like asking people with all the chips to put them back on the table. Like, there's this empowerment of like, well, the reason I have all the chips is because I know what I'm doing, so you should trust my judgment. So I don't think that's the right solution, but I do think that at some point when somebody does have so many chips, they have to decide whether they've taken so much that the game is over. And if the game
Right.
is
I mean,
over,
there's
then
a
and
tipping
then what
point, right?
happens, right? Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, there
exactly.
has to be a tipping point. Exactly. Yeah. Um, yeah. I
And I
mean,
think we're there. I mean, at least in certain sectors and certain industries, I think we're there.
yeah, no doubt.
We're talking about trillionaires, right? Like the idea that, we're like entertaining this and like not like objecting to this concept of one human being having that kind of money, and like having at least a open honest conversation about, well, maybe that's not a good thing, maybe that's a bug in our system that we should try to fix. So anyway, that's another, I mean, the cool thing about these quick hitters is like, I think we can go deep on any one of them, but this one really hits home for trying to get everybody to think, how can we continue to grow the pie and make it better for everyone? And the rallying cry for me is create systems and incentives that strengthen our middle class. That has always worked. That has led to economic prosperity in any country that we view as being prosperous and being a model for what we would like to live under, has always had the strongest middle class. It'll always be the case. I think that is not a controversial issue. So that to me is the
Yeah.
answer to
No,
this.
totally. Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of great snippets from that article. I mean, she touches on a lot, right? Because it really it touches so many aspects of society, right? Like college and the economy, and yeah, I mean, it just across the board, right? And I think she has a really great call to action on redefining prosperity at the end of the article. So check that out for sure. All right, that was another great one. So let's see, we have one more, I think. Yeah, okay, this is a good one. The reverse Flynn effect. Are we getting dumber? So this is from uh, Cal Newport, another kind of thought leader that I really love. So he talks about. I mean, he's had a few books out. He's a professor at Georgetown, I want to say, but he's had a few books about digital minimalism and deep work, and a lot of the stuff that we also talk about. But I want to start with this quote. So there's something called the Flynn effect, which was a steady increase of IQ scores, I believe, starting right after World War II up until present day. And then what they've discovered recently is that there's been a decline in IQ scores for the first time since World War II. So now they're calling it the reverse Flynn effect. So let's start with this quote here from the article. This is from his newsletter, by the way, which is called, actually, I don't know what it's called, but it was from Cal Newport. I'm sure you can find it if you look him up. But so the quote is: print requires us to make a logical case for a subject. A really significant feature of books is that if you make a case in print, you have to make it logically add up. You can't just assert things in the way you can on TikTok or on YouTube. Print privileges a whole way of thinking and a whole way of processing the world that is logical, that is more rational, that is more dense information, that is more intellectually challenging. If you lose these things in our culture, which I think we really are in the process of losing them, it's not surprising that people are getting stupider and that we seem to find that IQ is declining. So I kind of jumped the gun a little bit when we were talking about the Alpha School, talking about books, but that's pretty powerful, and I think a pretty powerful argument, right?
Man, this one, I keep thinking you can't pick a topic that I can get even more excited about, and then you whip this quote out, and it just God, how powerful is this argument that Cal Newport makes, right? Like, this is just so spot on from my perspective, and maybe articulated what maybe a lot of us have been thinking about why people around us and why, I guess, kids and even just even adults around us just don't seem as intelligent. And intelligence is a hard word to define. I think it's it's coupled maybe with laziness. It's coupled maybe with the theme of the podcast of questioning everything, because like intelligence is in nuance. Intelligence is in the ability to identify patterns and be have the insight of what you think the next move is going to be or the next action is going to be, and then using that information to iterate and continue to learn so that as you see a pattern repeat itself, you know how to handle it in a way that benefits society, hopefully, and not just selfishly you as the individual. And if you're not building that muscle, if you're not seeing how you make a credible argument on complex topics and complex nuance points, then we are not going to progress as a society. We just won't. Innovation will slow down, scientific discovery will slow down, cures to complex diseases and cancers and mental health will continue to slow down because science has solved for a lot of this in how research papers are published, because you have others not sitting on a stage debating shit. Literally, you have to read the articles, you have to get published in journals, you have to make arguments in written form, because that is the only way for any human, don't care how smart you are, to be able to keep track of the complexities of the decisions you're making to arrive at your final conclusion. It's hard. Like it's like trying to play a game of chess with 85 moves and ask somebody to remember the 13th move that you made. It's impossible. It has to be written down. So this idea of like not reading anymore or not reading as much as we used to, correlating to IQ, another one of those things that just, yeah, it makes so much sense.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't, he talks a lot about deep work and how kind of sustained, and I've been trying to build this into my day where I have, uninterrupted time where, zero distractions, get away from my usual environment and just try to focus on tasks at least for a couple hours, right? Where you don't have any distractions, no email, like have a list of tasks or, a set of work that you need to do and just focus on that because I get so much done in those short kind of bursts, right? Where it is completely focused work. And I think you lose a lot when you don't have, when there's constant distractions, things popping up on your phone, on your screen, email notifications, text notifications. Like every time there's context switching, right? And you pay a price on that. I think the general kind of number I've seen is like something like you lose 20% of time or your attention. I can't remember what the number is, but yeah, you pay a price mentally for every time you context switch. So yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said for kind of this deep focused effort and being able to make an argument and have it like I'm all for open debate, and like we obviously have a podcast. I like podcasts, but there's only so much depth you can have in a podcast, in a oral presentation, right? Where you can't back things up. You can make assertions with nothing behind it, and if you're not challenged, then that just kind of is left to stand. And I don't know, that's not a good thing, I don't think.
No doubt about it. And if we reserve podcasts as the only form of discourse, right? Like it almost it'll water down advancement as well. Like to your point, but if we couple, I mean, I think what we've done throughout our podcast of, we find things that we read that are interesting that then inform what we talk about. Like that makes for more interesting content because there's already denseness in the thoughts and the ideas that others have that are a lot smarter than us have been thinking about for a long time, and they share it in their written form, and then we extract that and have a conversation about it. Like imagine if we didn't have those quotes and these people putting these ideas out there to articulate what we feel. Like we wouldn't advance thought, we wouldn't advance progress. Let me give you a little bit of optimism. All right, here we go, another one. Oh, I'm on the optimism roll today. So
There you go.
early days of school again, but like amazing what a year difference will make. Our public schools have had a policy of empowering teachers to take the kids' cell phones away in the classroom. And it's been very lax since COVID. At least that's like since my kids have had their phones, they have had free reign to use their phones in the vast majority of their classes. I believe that the public tolerance for letting your kids use their cell phones in school is also now reduced. Like there is a greater push, I think, from parents that they should not be using their phones in schools and playing games while a teacher's trying to give a lesson. That we can debate about the quality of the education that we get, no doubt, as we've done, but just giving the kids the access to phones during the school day for them to goof off because the content that they're getting in school is not interesting just seems like such a recipe, like it's just such a disastrous recipe. And this year I think almost both my kids in high school, they said almost all of the teachers are making them keep their cell phones away. So I was happy to see that, at least in our school, that the kids are no longer getting free reign access to their phones while the teachers are teaching in the classroom. So, change is possible. And I do view the way in which our kids relate to their cell phone as, as addictive and as harmful to their mental health as other substances that they may be using. I think it's that serious. So anyhow, the optimism is that
Yeah, no
they're trying
doubt.
to crack down on it in school at least now.
Yeah, no, I know, and I know we've talked about Giant and Height a lot, but he has a big campaign to get phones out of schools, from bell to bell. So like full day, like no, either lock them up or don't bring them. So yeah, I think that's a worthwhile effort, and I agree with you. I think that dopamine hit that kids get, or not even just kids. I mean, everyone that you can get from your phone, is super harmful, especially in the context of school and learning.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Change is possible, and just think about how controversial that is and how long it took us to come to this realization. And going back to the earlier point of how you make complex points, have interesting discourse and have debates, even like the ones that we have on the pod, and hopefully that all of you have with your social circles, that if you didn't have experts that became experts because they dug into the nuance of beliefs, that they actually have a credible opinion because they've put the time in to say, hey, you know what? Using your cell phone the amount we do, probably not good for our health and not good for society. So I think that's so important. And I think we'll continue to get some more common sense infused into our decision making with the focus on just speaking more, communicating more, and reading and writing more to each other and yourself. So anyway, that was awesome,
All
man.
right, I
That
think
was so much fun.
that
Four
was great.
topics, my
Yeah, it
head's
was
spinning
good.
a little bit, but that was fun.
That was a good. I think we should do this more often. I think it's a good kind of way to touch on a few different things. But yeah, I think that was really good. So yeah, let us know if you have any feedback on this format. But yeah, I think we'll try to continue it.
Yeah, and if you have ideas of topics that you see or articles that you see that you think would be interesting to cover on the pod, or authors, or even podcasts that you listen to with ideas that you think are worth digging into, send them our way and love to expand the tent of folks that we study and find interesting and talk about on the pod. So thanks a lot. Good discourse. We'll wrap it up here. I think that's the pod.
That's the pod. See you next time.